Um, all right, look, I'm going to get started because this new update of uh, Lightroom and Photoshop is amazing. A lot of new things that we need to talk about in there, and that I'm going to demonstrate for you. So yeah, it's probably the biggest update I think that I can remember Adobe actually doing. Like apart from introducing Lightroom itself. So yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty amazing what they've done to it. And if you haven't seen much of what's going on, it's going to blow your mind what you can do with it without going into Photoshop. But we will be going into Photoshop for a few things and a little bit of fun and games in there. Show you some of the new features in there as well. So now I hope this works. As I haven't used this for a while, I'm hoping that I can share my screen as normal. It's not going to ask me for security updates. If I do have to do some security updates, we'll see what happens. So I'm just going to share my desktop and hopefully, oh, look at that.
Looking good.
Beautiful.
Looking good. Okay. All right.
Oh, I recognise a few of those places.
You probably do. A lot of you would have been with me on many of these things. But okay, so I think that's working okay. Can you all see my desktop?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. All right, that's great. Well, I've got an assortment of landscape. As you can see, I've got some wide open landscape, got some waterfalls, got a telephone box, got some nice stuff up in the mountains and some snow, some old buildings, relics, etc., and a bit out the bungles. I've even got a portrait to work on. Look at that.
Oh, beautiful.
So we'll get to that. We'll save that one for last, just to.
I don't see anything.
Yeah, good on you. Where's Simon? I remember that very well. So I've got a couple of iPhone photos there. Actually, that's an iPhone photo, as is this dingo. But there's a reason why they're there, and I'll get to that later on. It's a little bit of Photoshop magic that is now available. But I'm going to start with just a little explanation of some of the things that have changed slightly. So there's not much changed in the library. I believe there's some changes in the way you can use the metadata area down here, but honestly, I've even looked at that and it doesn't particularly worry me. That's not a game changer. But if we go to the develop module, I'm just going to go to the develop module now, and we don't want that one. We'll go back to this one here. So one of the things you're going to notice, just let me see if I can remember which way to do this now. Just trying to do my little thing that makes the screen zoom in and out. Maybe I haven't got it activated on this computer. I thought I did. Anyway, you can see over here in this corner, top right-hand corner, that where we used to have a whole heap of tools along here, including the graduated filter and the radial filter and the brush tool, that they're all gone. And what we've now got, we've got the crop tool, we've got the spot healing tool, we've got the red eye tool, which I've got to say I don't ever use, but
never use.
Anyway, it's there. And we've got this new one here. And this is they call this the masking tool now. And this is where all those other things have been sent off to hide. And this is where this whole update of Lightroom really shines. All this other stuff down here, and I don't know, it's been a while since we've done anything on here, but all this stuff down here, I suppose this is all new here, but I must admit I don't use that much myself. All this stuff down here is the same. Lens correction, transform, that's been there for a long time. Probably one of the biggest changes that came, and I think it was probably there before our last, when we did our last webinar, was the profiles being up here, where you can click on these profiles and assign different profiles to your photos based on what your camera does or what Adobe have put in there in terms of all these artistic black and white modern vintage. So if you hadn't had a play in there, I encourage that. It's a pretty cool way to sort your photos out and get some good looks, especially if you've really got to be shooting in RAW to take full advantage of it. But for instance, my Z cameras have these particular black and white ones called carbon and graphite. I love them both. They are so cool if you want to turn a photo into a black and white or, black and white, two different types of black and white that I like. And of course up here further, we've got flat, landscape, neutral, portrait, etc. So I shoot most of my stuff on this landscape one, and I should basically, before we get too much into these, I'll just go back a step and I'll just show you up here. I'll go up here and bring up the preferences. And one of the things now you'll see in the preference panel, which I clicked on the top under Lightroom Classic, you're on a PC, it's under Edit, File or Edit, I can't remember which one of these. But you'll see under this Presets tab here that you've got this new area here where you can go in and change what's going to happen. You've got all these presets here, but you can just tell your camera that when you import your photos to use the camera settings that are applied to your raw photos. Now, as you can see under here, it's got Z7 there. That was the last one that would have imported. But your camera settings will then be reflected in the images. Okay, so all you got to do is go into presets and click camera settings here. So the next time that you do an import, your photos will, over here on the right hand side, the profile will be whatever you've got set in your camera, in your picture styles on your camera. Now some cameras have a lot more than others. As I said, my Z has got a ridiculous amount of things. Again, just a quick look from that flat all the way down to toy. These are all Z7 internal camera styles. So I can set those and it'll shoot. And when I look at the image on the back of the camera, this is what it will look like. But later on, when I come into Lightroom, I can then go back to another version if I want to, because the raw data is all there. Because I quite often, if I'm in a black and white mood, I'll set it on either carbon or graphite, either of those two. And it's just great. You just get that instant black and white finish, and that's what you will see on the back of the camera. So most of the mirrorless cameras have a lot more of these now. I had my D850 had nowhere near that many styles. So it's all sort of changing as we go with mirrorless more and more. But certainly Olympus have got a lot on the OM cameras. Fuji, there's a whole heap in there. Fuji have the film styles, if you remember, Fuji Velvia and all those lovely films that Fuji used to have. They're all emulated in your Fuji cameras, and you can just choose one of those styles. So when you import the photos, they will then be imported with that active, ready to go. So I don't know if you remember, prior to Adobe doing this, this has been there for about 12 months now. Prior to Adobe doing that, I don't know how many of you would have seen it. You all would have seen it happen. Where you import your photos and they look really, really good for a moment. And then they just go flat. So they look like this, and then they look like that. They just go flat. And you would see it change in front of your eyes. So what it was doing, Adobe was very briefly reading the style from the JPEG that's embedded in your raw file. And then it would go, hang on, this is a raw file. We need to go back to basics, and it would go back to flat. So now it doesn't do that. It will stick with whatever you've chosen as your desired preset, your camera style. Okay, so I thought it was important just to go through that quickly. All right, now getting on to this new juicy stuff. All right. As I said, this has changed now. You've lost all those tools, but you haven't really. They're still there. All you have to do now is click this little button. So we'll start with a landscape photo, and I'll go through a process of editing that photo and show you how you can make selections, and you can use masks on top of masks and all sorts of stuff, which sounds complicated, but it is so easy. Once you get your head around it, you'll just absolutely love this. All right, so we click on this little button here, and straight away you're going to see we've got this new panel that pops up, and we've got add new mask, select subject, select sky. They're both new, I think you realize. But here we've got the brush, we've got the linear gradient, which I call the graduated filter. We've got the radial gradient, which was the radial graduated filter. Color range, luminance range, and depth range are all down here now. They used to be attached to the bottom of these filters once you clicked on them. They're now here. Okay, so I'm going to explain how all this works. And I'll do it by editing photos as we go, and then you'll be able to see what it does and how it does it. So, for instance, in this particular image, being a landscape, we've got a sky and we've got the foreground, the land. So if I click up here and go select sky, you'll see down here it's saying detecting the sky, and you'll notice it has now found the sky and showing us the mask. So until, you'll notice over here, all these sliders are all on 0. So these are all the custom tool sliders, and they're all on 0 until we start to move them, and then you will see changes. So at the moment, what Adobe's doing, it's giving us the mask, showing us what it's selected, which you'll see later on when we do some birds and animals, how that's quite useful. And you can see here, it's done a very good job. If we look down along the line of the rocks here, around there, across the top of the mountains, that's all misty mountains. It's all the mist, seen that as sky, and I'm quite happy to accept that. There are some photos that we will do that it will select stuff we don't want, and I will show you how you can fix that very, very simply. We've got lots of tools available to us here. So now that I've got the sky selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here into these sliders. I'm going to click on the exposure slider. You'll notice as soon as I click on it, I just left click with my trackpad or mouse. And now I can slide this across to the left, and you'll see that sky will start to darken up. I'll go crazy. There you go. So that's really, really crazy. But let's just put it somewhere where it's going to make that sky very punchy and look pretty cool. So I'm just going to put it, say, -1 stop. Now this is very much the same as using a graduated filter on your camera, except it would be darkening up these rocks too, as you would know. If you had a graduated filter on the front of your camera, you'd get that sky, but you'd also get dark rocks here. And previously, if I go back a step, I'll just delete that mask. And what I'm going to do now is I will create a new mask here, a linear gradient. And this is what we had, this is the tool we had before. So let me just show you the difference. I would have pulled that down like that, and then I would come over here, and I would start to make that darker. But look what's happening to the rocks. You can see that the rocks are getting darker too. So then I would have to go in and get a brush and take all that out. And and yes, you can do that. I can still do that here. I can go in here to the mask, and I can go subtract. I can grab this brush, and I can come over here, and I can paint away what's in what's actually in that filter. But you'll see that, it's messy. All right, so much easier. We'll just get rid of these. Delete and delete, and we'll start again from scratch. So again, select sky. Easiest way to do it. You saw what a great job it did. We'll let it select the sky. Do that again. I'm going to bring down my exposure by 1 stop. There we go. And now I can still, if I wanted, let's say I wanted to change the foreground a little bit, like we've got some shadows in here, and I wanted to do a little bit of work on that. I could use a graduated filter from the bottom up. Let me show you that. So we'll go create mask. I'll grab a linear gradient. I'll take it from the bottom up like that, a little bit of an angle. And now I'm going to bring the exposure up a little bit and then sharpness up. So whatever I'm doing in here only affects that pink area there, as you can see. And between these two lines, that's the graduated bit. Okay, so I'm doing a reverse graduated filter from the bottom up. All right, so a little bit of exposure, bring the shadow detail up a little bit. There we go. A little bit more saturation, just to give it a little punch. Maybe a little bit of texture there. And that's looking okay. But you might be saying, well, the sky was so easy to do. Why have we got to use this graduated filter here? The top of the rocks here isn't done. It hasn't done as good a job. And you would be absolutely right. So let me show you how we can now do it the easy way. So I'm just going to delete that graduated filter. And there are times you still will use that filter, but we don't need to use that here. So what we can do, create new mask and select sky. Same as before. But now over here on the right-hand side above the panel, you'll see invert. So if I click invert, it now selects everything except the sky. All right, how easy is that? Now I can come over and apply those settings. A little bit of exposure, a little bit of shadows, a little bit of texture, a little bit of saturation, E for sharpness, and there we go. So that has, instead of having a graduated filter across there, my rocks up here now are perfect. Everything in the landscape itself is perfect. The sky is perfect. And if I wasn't talking about this, that would have taken me literally 60 seconds, if that, to do that. Just create a mask, boom, make your changes, make another one, invert it, boom, make your changes, landscape's finished. Just like that. Okay, so then down here, you just click done, and we're done. So I'm just going to show you the before and after. So that's before, and that's after. So again, before, after. So you see the sky is a lot more punchy. Here the sky is quite bright, and that's after. Now, I can look at that and I go, you know what, those clouds are still a little bit bright. So, you know, I don't want to do all that again. I can go back, click this little button again, and you'll see the masking panel pops back up. Now, this masking panel, by the way, if you're working on a laptop, that could really get in your way. You can drag that over here and you can dock it in here if you want, okay? Because I'm working on a 27-inch iMac, I'll leave it there. I got plenty of real estate here. I'm happy for it to live there rather than taking space in there. So now I can go back in. I've got mask 1, mask 2. Mask 1, as you can see, the white area, if you hover over it, it tells you what it is. Hover over that one. This is the one I want, so I'm going to click on it. Okay, and now that I've clicked on it, I can now go back in here and make some more adjustments. If I've done too much, I can reduce it a little bit, but I'm going to pull down the highlight. And that'll just make those clouds a little more defined. There we go, that's better. Then I click done, and my job's done. So just like that, I've edited that landscape photo and improved it to a much more friendlier image. Okay, so again, before, very bright sky, foreground's okay, but you know, a few dark areas. Sky's much better, and now we've got nice, bright, sharp, defined foreground. Okay, so I will do that again with some more landscapes, and we'll do some other ways of doing that as well. But have we got any questions on that before I move on to the next one?
No. Very easy.
It is, isn't it? It's amazing. It's just so simple. So just for fun, here's another one, very dark in the foreground. So this one should really benefit from that technique. So again, let's go straight up, select the sky. You should find that very easily. There we go. It's found the sky. So I'm just going to bring the exposure down. Not so much this one, because this photo is a little bit underexposed. This was actually part of a 5-shot HDR, I think. So I'll probably picked the wrong photo. It doesn't matter. So I'll just darken that sky a little bit. Now I'll go back up here again, create new mask. That's adding a new mask here. So again, select the sky, but this time invert. Once it's finished, invert. And then over here, I can now roll my exposure up like so. Bring the shadow detail up like so. Welcome whoever that was. Bring the texture up, bring the clarity up. This is being recorded, by the way, guys, so you'll be able to see it. If you want to revisit it, you'll be able to hop on to my website on the free webinar area. It'll be up there in the next couple of days. So I reckon that's done. That looks pretty cool. So I'll just click there. And again, here's the before. Here's the after. And how long did that take? Literally no time at all. And is it going to work?
Mark, what were the keystrokes for before and after?
Before and after is the little backslash key. In the case of a Mac, it sits above the return button. Okay, so the little backslash key above the return button on a Mac. I'm not sure where it is on a PC keyboard, but it'll be around there somewhere. It's basically
same spot.
Yep. So you just click that and it takes you back before and after. And it actually shows you on the left-hand side over here. It says before, just there. And I press it again and it goes away. So that's a pretty cool result. Actually, I like that there. Yeah. There you go. All right, so very, very easy. So let's have a look at a slightly different tool now. We'll go into this waterfall shot here. Over in, these are all in New Zealand, those photos actually. Here we go. So what I'm going to do now is, again, as you can see, camera landscape, it's automatically chosen that profile for me. I'm just going to click the auto button, see what that does before we start. So let's brighten it up a little bit, probably a bit too much, so I'll pull it back a bit. So I'm just going to slide that back. And the shortcut for auto, by the way, is Command or Control U. Command on a Mac, Control on a PC, and then the letter U. And that just applies Adobe's automatic settings to it that it thinks is going to make it look better. It tries to find the black point and the white point and sort it out. So there's probably not a lot to do with this photo, but I'm just going to go in here anyway. And this time, I'm going to grab a radial gradient. Okay, so that's a radial gradient, and the radial gradient is this one. Looks like that. Okay, so I can move my mouse around and create any kind of combination, circle, oval, that I want. And what I want to do is I want to get all that water in the middle, like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the highlights. I'm just going to pull the highlights back. I'll take it all the way. You'll see it. You see the difference? Okay. But you'll also notice that it's affecting this area here because it's caught up in there, which is fair enough. That's what's going to happen. But I'm just going to pull down the highlights a little bit just to take the edge off that bright white of the water. And then what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to do much more to it actually. I'll probably just do that. I might pull a little bit of sharpness off it. The opposite of sharpening is, well, going backwards. And that'll soften that water a little bit more. But I don't want to soften all this stuff. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in here, I'm going to subtract. I'm going to click the subtract button. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract a color range. Use luminance or color, but I'm going to use color. So I'm going to click that. And now you'll see I've got a little eyedropper. See the little eyedropper down there? And if I go into my image, I don't want these greens to be affected by that filter that I just applied. So I'm going to draw a box around those particular colors. And when I release the mouse, you should see that darken up a little bit. The lightning that I did to the water should go away. No, that didn't work. Should go the other way. That was weird. Because I got it back to front. I needed to invert it. Let me start that again. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to figure out what was going on there. It was all going back to front. Or was it? Hang on. Oh, no, that's correct. I subtracted that. That's better. Okay. I just had I think I'd picked too much there. It wasn't doing exactly what I wanted. So now, if I go back up to this radial gradient here and just make sure, just a teensy bit of exposure off there, and that's about all I'm going to do to this. It really didn't need much. It was just these little highlighted areas. So again, that's the before, and that's the after. Before, after. So not a big deal of change for that one. And similarly, this one here, yeah, I'm not even going to bother with that because it probably doesn't need much doing to it anyway. This one over here, on the other hand, I'll go straight to this one. That's a little bit different because it's quite dark. Obviously, it's exposed for the waterfall. And to be honest, I got a feeling this might have been part of a sequence of shots. I did have a lot of shots similar to this. I was just looking at it before, but I think it was more, I think I was actually doing a focus stack, to be honest. But anyway, it doesn't matter. And what I'll do, I'll start with the auto button here. Okay, and that's, it's done a fairly good job. I kind of like the dark areas here anyway. But again, that waterfall and this shine on the water here, we could probably do a little bit with. So again, I'm going to go into here and I'm going to grab a radial gradient, which will be like this. Okay, but I'm going to show you a different way this time to change the way that's things. So again, I'll come in here and I'll take my highlights down. And I reckon that's really all we have to do to that. And to be honest, it hasn't made a huge difference to the outside there, but just for the sake of the exercise, subtract. I'm going to use the brush. So I click on subtract and the brush, and then I just come in here with this minus. I just paint around here the areas that I want to make sure are not being affected by that change in the highlights. And I accidentally touched it here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to click add. I'm going to go back in there. You can see how that's taking away those highlights. Okay. All right. So that's it. That's pretty well done. Make sure you click done afterwards. And again, before, after, huge difference. I don't think any of this other stuff needs anything done to it at all. I think it looks quite good the way it is. It probably needs to be sharpened like normal, so that's where I go down here to the sharpening tools, slide this one across to about 110 or so, and then hold down the masking, the Option key or Alt key on a PC, click that, slide across until I'm happy with my sharpening. And that's about it. Okay, that hasn't changed. That's nothing new. That's the way it's always been. I don't need to worry about noise in that image. It's taken on a tripod at a low ISO. There's not going to be any noise. So I'm happy with the result there. Again, before, after. Okay. Now, another thing I forgot to tell you is that, let me just bring back up that filter. So here's the mask. So if I'm making adjustments to the actual radiant here, dark and light, you can see what it's doing there. Okay. So if I'm making those adjustments and I want to make, so this is called a local adjustment. So it's only affecting this. Up here in the histogram, you'll see you've got blacks, shadows, exposure, highlights, and whites. If I click my mouse here, I can do a global adjustment. So I can actually adjust the entire image up here. So if I decide that I wanted to make that green just a little bit less than what Adobe did when I hit off, I could just ever so slightly do that. But this is still active. It's still active, but it is also being affected by that global change. So that might mean that these here are too much. I might have to just pull it back slightly to compensate for the global change up here. So this is like the best of both worlds. You can be down here making a local adjustment to part of the image, and at the same time pop up here and make a global adjustment based on blacks, shadows, exposure, highlights, and whites.
How did you adjust it there then when you clicked up in the top?
Move it to the left and right.
Okay, so it moves as a block.
Yeah, see how it moves? I'm holding the mouse down, moving that histogram at the top.
Yeah, okay.
Very clever. It's looking sort of fairly dull, and this is up at Craig's Hut, up in the Victorian High Country. So it's looking a little bit dull, needs a bit of help. So first of all, we're going to hit the, you'll notice it's on camera standard. So I'm going to change that to landscape. I don't know why it was on standard, but anyway, that's okay. And so now, once I've done that, I'll close the grid and I'll hit auto and see what that does. I'll probably brighten up a bit, possibly, yeah, that'll do for starters. Now I'm going to go back up in here and I'm going to select the sky. So we're pretty much going to run through what we did before. Let's see. Oh, it is amazing. I think you'll have to agree. But it's also picked up a bit of the roof here. Okay, so we don't want that. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to subtract. We're going to use the brush. And this time I'm going to click Auto Mask. What Auto Mask will do, that will find the edges and avoid going into the sky. So you'll see as I paint it away, it doesn't take away from the sky. And it's also probably that little bit of mountain range there. And a little bit down here. In fact, I think it's got that bit there too. Across there. It's just having trouble discerning that that was not part of the sky. Okay, now you see I've gone too far there. So I'll hold down the Alt key or Option key, and I can then get a slightly bigger brush. So it's sort of it's just sort of having a little bit of a struggle there, getting the exact edge, but it's still done a pretty good job. Just a little bit more. I'm not going to waste too much time. That'll do. A little bit there. I can see a bit of pink there. I can see a little bit of pink there. So it's good how it shows you that pink color. You can change that color. It doesn't have to be pink. I think it works better. And now we can now go in and make our adjustment. So again, I'm going to pull the exposure down. I'm going to pull the highlights down, help those clouds a little bit. It's not going to do a huge amount to it. That's probably about it. Now I'm going to create another mask for the front. Again, select the sky. This time we'll invert it. So now it's picking all the front part here. And what we're going to do with that is get the exposure up a little bit and a little bit more saturation and sharpness. And why I'm sharpening it here and not down in the other tool is because this is only going to sharpen the areas here rather than sharpening the entire image. So it's selective. Now I don't know I don't like what's happened there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my first mask where I used the brush. I'm going to delete that because I think that's actually done a better job across there than what I did. So we'll just leave that as it is. I'm not sure why that area there is so bright. It's strange. But overall, I mean, considering that you're doing all this in Lightroom and not in Photoshop, I just think it's amazing what it can do. Rather than having to, previously, if you wanted to do something like that, you would have to go into Photoshop. You would just have to go into Photoshop. You had no choice. We won't worry about that one.
Excuse me, Mark.
Yep.
Where do you bring up the profiles on your right-hand panel? I don't seem to be able to see those on mine.
Over here?
Yeah, so I've gone into that.
Yeah, it's under the basic panel.
Yeah.
Are you using the latest version of Lightroom?
Yep, sure am.
They got to be there.
So basic panel, and I've got camera landscape V2 up.
Click on those four little dots on the right hand side.
Boxes here. You just click on that if you want to change it.
Okay. Oh, right. Yeah, got them. Thank you.
Yeah, that just expands it. Otherwise, you'd have this huge thing sitting here you'd have to go through, which would be.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a tricky one here because we've got this sky looking pretty cool, and we've got this little bit of the Flinders Ranges here with the sun poking through, and then very, very dark in the foreground. So again, this is going to be the perfect candidate. Hope it works, but the perfect candidate for selecting the sky to start with. And now you'll see it's actually picked up the top of those ranges there as part of the sky, and that doesn't worry me because that was actually in bright sunlight. So we'll leave that the way it is. What I'm going to do now is invert it. And because what I actually want to do is increase the exposure in the foreground so we can see a bit of what's going on. And we'll just do a bit of shadow. So you see I'm pulling the shadows up. It's like magic. It's just magically bringing that foreground to life. So now we couldn't even see this mountain range before. This is now nice and bright with the sun hitting it. I mean, that's looking pretty cool. And, I don't need to do much more to that. I might just do a global exposure increase, just a little bit more for that sky. And then pull exposure foreground down a tad because this is sunrise. And, that's done. Just like that. So before, now we can see that there actually is a foreground in the image. So absolutely marvelous tool, this. Absolutely amazing tool. And we've got another one here. This one, this is actually about a 5 or 6 shot panorama. I put it in there because I was keen to see whether it'll still, a cutty wire wouldn't, but it should still pick up the sky, even though it's, and this is a big file. This is actually an original DNG file produced by the panorama. It's probably a couple of 100 megabytes at least. Quite a big file. So I'm first of all going to hit the auto button up here and see what that does. That's just brighten it a little bit. Then we'll go up here and we'll create a new mask. There we go. And select the sky. Let's see how it goes. Oh, okay, that didn't take long at all. Wow. I expected it to take a little bit longer, but yeah. So not a lot to do to that. I'd probably just pull it down a bit, pull the highlights down. Actually, that's making quite a difference. Pulling the highlights down, that's what it needed. Maybe a little bit with the whites too, just a little bit. That looks pretty cool. Not a big difference. I'm not even going to worry about the foreground. The foreground's all right the way it is. So I just click done. So again, now there's the before, there's the after. Not a huge difference in this one, but just a subtle change that, again, if we were doing that previously, it's taken you a long time to do that without this new tool. Considering, of course, all the clouds and colours in there. So, you know, in the past, we could have done a graduated filter and then done a colour selection, but there's so many colours in there. Some of them may also be in these shadows here. I'm sure that some of these colours in the shadows are going to be similar greys and tones as to what's up here. So it just wouldn't work properly, whereas that just selected the horizon perfectly. Boom, job done. Gotta love it. Okay.
Photo.
Who was that? Janet?
Janet, yeah. I love that photo.
Yeah, that was cool. That was the Flinders Ranges. That's looking up to the Pound. That was 2019, before COVID.
Before the plague.
Yeah, before the plague, yeah. A couple more up here at Craig's Hut in the snow. Not going to worry about those. We'll leave them for now. Now I've got this one here. I'm just keen to see. Actually, no, this one here is probably better. So this one here, as you can see, we've got this sort of dark wall in shadow here. Fairly bright sky, again, white clouds in the sky. So let's just see how it goes selecting this. See if it picks up these bits in here in the sky, or whether we have to select them separately. So I'm going to go in here and go select sky. Let's see what happens. I think you'll agree that's pretty smart.
Very.
That's pretty smart to look through the windows and pick up that sky. Now, I haven't done this photo before. This is the first time. I just chucked all these photos in to make a little bit of a collection, you know, a little bit varied. So I'm going to pull the exposure down on the sky, and you'll see it's pulling it down in the windows as well. Now it's nighttime with very bright things. But that's pretty amazing.
Wow.
Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to select the sky, and this time we'll invert it. So now we're working on the building, and now I'm going to bring my shadows up. So you can see that bringing that up on the left-hand side there. I'll bring up a little bit of exposure. Don't do too much. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that sharpening. Boom. And add a bit of texture, a bit of clarity in there, make all this stuff really punchy. And yeah. All right, I'm happy with that. So now I'll just go done and before, after. That's bloody remarkable, if I say so. And it would pick up the sky now. I love that. That is really, really cool. So that was a very, again, like, you know, how long is it taking? It's just so quick to do this stuff. Now it's just going to change everything about the way you do your photography or the way you do your processing. Now I've got this one here. I've got this in here for, this is a little bit of a segue where I'm going to do a focus stack. So this is 5 shots, all part of a focus stack. Got this lovely texture in this wall here. I love all this, but you'll see it's quite soft over here. But this last photo down here is quite sharp. So we're just going to open this up in Photoshop as layers. So we just select all the photos, edit in here, open as layers in Photoshop, and we'll just stitch that together pretty quickly. And then I'll show you that you can do this same stuff from Photoshop without coming back into Lightroom. For those of you that use Camera Raw rather than Lightroom, and I don't know why you would these days, but so just give this a moment to load. So we've got one loading, shouldn't take long. These are still the raw files. Nothing's been modified or edited prior to this, so you're seeing everything straight out of the camera. One to go. And there we go. There's my 5. So again, for that, just to remind everybody, when you're doing a stack, focus stack, select the first one in the layers panel over here, come down the bottom, hold down your shift key and click the left mouse, and that selects them all. Now I handheld this, so I wasn't using a tripod. I've been a little lazy. So what I'm going to do first, over here under edit, I'm going to auto align the layers. Okay, so that will line them up for me. So any movement that may have occurred while I was hand holding this between the first shot and the last shot will be taken care of thanks to the geniuses at Adobe. So I'll click on auto align. It automatically comes, I just leave it on auto there, and then we'll just click OK. So that'll do a little bit of heavy lifting in the background. Go. So this is the process. If ever you do any handheld focus stacking, you've got to do this alignment. And you might say, well, you know, why would you do it handheld? Sometimes you're caught out without a tripod, like I was here. I was just going for a wander, and I just saw this texture, and I thought, you know what, this would be a perfect focus stack. And so I just set the camera, as you may or may not know, the Z7 II this was taken with does focus stacking in camera. So all you do is set it and it'll take the shots. You just got to hold it rock steady. The Canon R5, R6, they do the same thing. Fuji's, all the cameras out there now are doing stacking. Well, all the new ones, most of the new ones. And you can do it handheld. You've just got to be very stable and remember to do that alignment when you bring it into Photoshop. So then we go up here to edit, auto blend, click OK again. So now it's going to do the actual blending. So what you'll see is this sharp area here is going to be sharp all the way down the image at the moment when it finishes this. It's like magic. There we go. Look at that. Wow. Wowzers. It was like it's taken an F100 or something. Anyway, okay, so that's done. And so now what I'm going to do is I go here to layers and I'll flatten the image because I don't want all these layers. It's a huge file. So now I've just got a single image, as you can see. couple little dodgy bits around the outside, and that's purely because of that aligning where it's had to tilt and trim a little bit. So all I do to fix that is just do a very easy crop. Before I do that though, let me show you from Photoshop how we can do what we were doing in Lightroom a moment ago without leaving Photoshop. So up here under filter, at the top of Photoshop, here we go, filter. And then we've got here, camera raw filter. Look at that. Click on that and the image will open up in camera raw. Now camera raw is exactly the same as the develop module in Lightroom. All the tools that are in here are exactly the same. They're just laid out differently to confuse you. So over on the right hand side here, we've got the spot healing tool. We've got our new masking button. We've got our red eye presets. So that's different. Where's the crop tool? It's in there somewhere. But anyway, all I really want to do here is go into the masks. So I click on the mask and you'll see it's exactly the same as before, just set out differently. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select the sky. And it's done a nice job on that. And I'm just going to bring the exposure down on the sky. Just a little bit, not too much in this case. I think I might add a polarizer filter on or something because it's a little bit different over here than what it is over here. So I'm not going to fiddle too much with that. So now I'm going to create a new mask. I'm going to select the sky again. This time I'm going to invert it. And now you can see it's selected the building. Now I can come down here and get my shadows and really make this side of the building come alive. Not by using exposure. I think exposure would be the wrong thing. Or maybe a little bit of exposure. I think shadows is where it's at. Bring that up a bit. I'm going to go back to my first mask. Just thought what I might do there is pull the highlights down. That's okay. Maybe a little bit of white. There we go. Come back to my second mask again. And after I've done my adjustments there to brighten it up, I'll come down here and I'll add texture, clarity. I want to make this really come alive. You see that clarity slider? That really brought all this brickwork to life. It's a fantastic tool for this type of subject where you've got, textures, a lot of sand in there, sandstone obviously, textures of the bricks. That's where the clarity and the texture sliders really come into their own. So when I'm done with that, I just click OK. I commit to the changes. And that will change the image back here. Okay, what happened there? Well, that was strange. It didn't stick. Okay, well, that's a bug. Okay, you've all seen a bug happen there. Committing to those changes, that should have absolutely changed that in Photoshop. But all is not lost. If we save this back into Lightroom, that was really weird. That shouldn't have done that. I will send off a report to Adobe on that. Go back into Lightroom. Okay, so here's the image that we just created.
Mark, it's Sylvia.
Yeah.
Did that happen because you hadn't duplicated your base layer and you were on a locked layer?
Shouldn't have made any difference, Sylvia.
Oh, okay.
That raw fill, it may have, maybe that because it's locked, but
Yeah.
it normally overrides that. Or it
Okay.
So
Just a thought.
yeah, and it's probably the right thought. Maybe I'll try it again later, but again, in here, just to show that everything is the same, click on here, select sky, and it will find that sky exactly like it did before. And we can then pull those highlights down and the exposure down a little bit, just like I did before. whites a little bit. Then we can go up and create a new mask and select the sky again. Invert it. We can come in here and bring shadow detail up. Too much. Texture, clarity, and there we go. Exactly the same as what we just did back in Photoshop.
Can you change the color of the sky, how the blue it is in
Over here.
Yeah, can you?
Well, I could probably, okay, let's just have a quick look at that. Let's go to the, so what we'll do, it's a good idea, Janet, and this is probably a good opportunity to show another tool. So I'm going to go create mask. I'm going to grab a linear gradient and I'm going to see how I'm going to do this. We'll go across like this. So we don't want it to affect this part, but we want it to affect that part. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to pull some saturation out of it.
Yeah,
So
that's
colours, that's looking a little bit better, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, but unfortunately it's taking it out of the building too. So this is where we're going to use a new technique, which is part of this whole process, where we can use intersecting masks. So it gets a little bit complicated here, but it's very interesting. So we're going to intersect this mask with select sky. So I'll just do it and you'll see what it does. So what it does, it selects the sky and applies the mask. The mask that we just created is only applied to the sky. So even though it's a graduated filter and it was taking all this building and desaturating it, now it's not doing that. It's only affecting the sky. It's an amazing new tool, this intersecting masks, which is another, I mean, okay, first of all, we've got this mask, we've got select sky and select subject, which I haven't got to yet. But on top of that, we can now intersect the masks so that you can use an old mask like a radial filter or a graduated filter, but then only apply it to a select area by using the intersect. So that's one you need to have a little think about, but it's just amazing. It keeps everything about this new version just keeps surprising. Okay, so I have a little fun with this one. So this is just a shot I grabbed as we were walking around, and I just kind of like the lay of the land, but I'm not over fussed on the sky. Now, this is not a new feature of Photoshop, but I just thought for those of you that haven't sort of experimented yourselves, you may not realise it's there since the last webinar, because I think it's new since then. Some of you will remember that I was using Luminar 4 to swap out skies, and I think a lot of you are doing the same thing. Well, now you can do that in Photoshop. So, but first of all, before I do that, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to select the sky and invert it. So I just want to do a little bit of work on the landscape itself. So we'll invert that and we'll just add, missed that little bit of the tower there. We'll just use the brush and we'll just add that in. I'm just painting that in there. Okay, there we go. And now I'm just going to pull the exposure down a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of saturation and I'm going to sharpen up all that stuff and a little bit of texture. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'll commit to that, just click done. Now right click, go edit in Photoshop. Now you can make those adjustments when you come back from Photoshop, but I was actually making them there to the raw file. I think it's better to do them before you start and then do whatever else you're going to do in Photoshop after you've made those adjustments. So now under edit at the top here, we go down to sky replacement. And we can throw a new sky on there, something like that if we want, or we could go to just something that's just not quite as bland as what we had before. So even that sky, or because the other sky was just pure blue sky. And I mean, that's nice, but it's not a lot going on. So I always like a little bit of cloud in the sky. I mean, it depends what it is, what you're doing it for. Yeah, you could turn this into a sunset if you were really keen. That one would be pretty cool. We can adjust the white balance of the foreground, all that sort of stuff. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to put a interesting sky.
Mark, can you use your own sky images?
These are my own sky images.
Okay.
Yeah, not all of them, but some of these are. So, yeah, you just add them in. Down here, you've got this little plus button. Can you see that just there?
Yes.
You just click on that and then you bring in your own sky. See, it says import sky images.
Okay.
Yeah, so use your own sky. So I'm always stopping these days and just taking a photo out the window of a sky. When you spot a good one, it's great to have a bit of a library. Okay, so I'm not going to use that. So I'll click OK, and then I'm going to go Layer, Flatten the Image. I'll close it. I'm going to save it. That'll put it back into Lightroom for me. And it should put it back somewhere. It's coming. Where is it? Where to go? Down the end here, I think. Okay. So there's the new one. And there's the old. So the old versus the new. Yeah, just a little change, but I think it really makes a big difference to the image. Okay, so look, I think I've got other landscapes here, but I'm not going to keep going on and on with landscapes. We've been going over an hour now. We haven't got a bird, but I think you get the idea. You know, there's lots you can do, like this one here with all this shadow area, very bright up here, but needs work. Very easy to pick the sky, darken it, invert it, use the shadow slider, and yeah, you'll have this looking $1 million in no time. All right, let's have a look at this guy. Okay, so he's exposed quite nicely, but I think you'll agree the background here is quite bright. Could probably be toned down a little bit. So let's just have a look and see what happens here. So this time, I'm going to use Select Subject. Now, I know this works really well with the birds. I haven't tried on this guy, but let's see what happens. Okay, so it's picked that up reasonably well, but it hasn't picked all of his body up here. So that's okay, because we can just go Add. We can grab a brush. It's done all the hard work. Look at all that hair around there. It's done a fantastic job. So we can just grab a brush now, and we'll turn on Auto Mask. And I can just paint in here with this brush and just add. Okay, so I've just painted all over that. Because it's still showing us the red mask, that's all pretty easy. If we turn that off, you'll see I would have had no idea where I was painting. So we're having that on. Another way to turn it on off is just to press the letter O for overlay. So I just press the letter O on my keyboard there. I press it again and it comes back. Now I can go over into the image. Now all I'm going to do to him is I'm going to sharpen him. So I'm going to sharpen this up here. Might add a little bit of texture. That looks cool. Okay. So then I'm going to come up again and mask, subject. And again, I'm going to have to add brush. in. Now I'm going to invert this, so I could have actually done it the other way, inverted it and painted it out. But hey, it makes no, you got to do it one way or the other. So stick to it this way. Okay, there we go. So now I come up here and invert. And as you can see, that's all done. Now I'm going to pull down the exposure.
Doing his whole body, it didn't work.
So, it is doing this whole body. Why is that?
It only selected what you painted in.
It didn't invert.
Oh, I did invert it.
Yeah, but it only selected what you painted in, not what it automatically selected.
Hang on. I inverted the brush.
Oh.
There we go.
I would have never worked out that mistake.
No, it's still doing it. Look at that. Oh, that's weird.
Could you select the sky in that and do it that way?
I don't know whether it'll pick that up as sky. It might, but I don't. I'm just going to delete this one and start again. Okay, that's really weird. Okay, so we'll do a new mask. We'll try select sky. See what it's like. See what it does. Yeah, it's only picked up part of it. No. We'll yeah. No, I'll go back to plan A. So create a new mask and select the subject. Invert the subject. Okay, and this time I'm going to take this off. I'll do it that way. So I'll subtract using a brush. Almost there. Almost there. Okay, now it's working. There we go. So I'm just going to pull that down ever so slightly, pull the highlights down a bit, just to take the edge off it. You see it's done a bit of a line along here now, so I need to be a bit more careful. Expand that up, make it a bit bigger. Use the Z tool. Come across here and then use the brush again to fix that up a little bit better. Maybe it might be one of those things where it just works properly. Probably because it's that area that's just out of focus. I think whichever way we go, we're going to end up with a line there. Have to have a think about that. I'm not sure what the easy fix for that is. It sort of needs to be more of a feather, a blend, if you know what I mean, across there. So the rest of it, it's done pretty good. Let's have a look.
What if you use the density, you know, when you use your brush? Yeah, up the top there, if you didn't have it so harsh.
Yeah. It sort of is a defined line though, but it hasn't really defined it. It's sort of in between, isn't it? Yeah. It's all this out of focus area. That's the problem with it. But yeah, let's try a slightly different brush.
Would that be something that you would use a luminosity mask or something like that, Mark, in Photoshop?
Well, you could do. I mean, I'm trying to do all this without going to Photoshop.
No, understand.
Yeah. That's actually a little bit better, actually. Yeah. So I just used a slightly different brush there to try and blend that in a little bit better. I don't think we're going to get it much better than that without doing Photoshop. Okay, so but again, if we look at the before and after, I haven't made a big difference to this guy here, this part, but certainly just sort of taking that very bright background, just taking the edge off that very bright background, I think has made a nice difference to the shot. Okay, now I'll move on to this little guy, and this is one of those sort of tricky photos where we've got this dark face with a very dark background. So I'm going to start by cropping this. Let's give it a little bit of crop. There we go. And I'll come up here to select subject. Right, so that's done a really good job of selecting that.
That's brilliant.
Considering that that's all black. So I'm not sure how it does that. That's just amazing. But anyway, okay, so it's done a pretty good job on that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just increase the shadows. At the same time, I'm going to make the background a little bit darker using my slider at the top there. So I'm doing a global adjustment, and then I'm going to make him a little bit brighter. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the another tool. I'm going to make a second mask with a brush. All right. And I'm going to come into his nose area. I'll just zoom in a bit so you can see what I'm doing. All right. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to add, I'll add a fair bit of exposure so you can see what I'm doing as I do it, then I'll change it. So I'm not going to. It's just this area, actually, that's bad. Okay. So
You do his eye a little bit more?
yeah, we could do his eyes sort of. You always worry about the eye of these guys because it's sort of dark for a reason. Sort of. Let's do it anyway. Yeah, I probably wouldn't do much more than that. A little bit odd. Okay, so now I was going to use that intersecting mask thing here in case I bled over into any of this area, but it didn't actually do that. The brush did a pretty good job. But what you could do here is you could still use the intersect mask with select subject. Okay, do you understand why I'm doing that? If I click that, that means that only the subject would, oh, hang on, that took it away. That was, oh, it's inverted. There we go, fixed. So I think that's just amazing.
If you went over the edges, you invert them, intersect it, that's a good idea.
So there you go. Before, where you can hardly even see his little nose, and then after. So not too much change to him. I didn't want to brighten him up too much. He was already pretty good. But now at least you can sort of see his nose there against that black background. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's move on to another one. One of my favorite subjects, of course, birdies. So here's a lovely female Goliath. So I'll just do a quick crop. This is down at Glue Pot, one of the water troughs there, bird hides. Love that place. And so I'm just doing a bit of a crop here.
Using this, Jane.
There we go. Now what I'm going to do here is I can see in this image, there is a little bit of noise in the background. Okay. Now I could, look, I could open this up in Topaz denoise and we'll fix that straight away. It'll be fantastic. But not everybody's got Topaz denoise. And we've now got these new tools that we can use. Lightroom. And so why not use them? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the subject, see how it goes. It's pretty good. It's done the bird on the perch and left the background alone, which is exactly what I want. So what I'm going to do first though is on the bird, I'm going to increase the sharpness. So this is selective sharpening on those feathers. So a little bit of sharpness there. That's all I'm going to do. I think the exposure on the bird is spot on. I don't want to change that. Okay, so purely going to sharpen. Now what I'm going to do is create a new mask, select the subject. We know it'll get the bird right again. And now I'm going to invert. Now, what's the opposite of sharp? Soft. Well, just negative sharp. So we'll pull that back and we'll take the noise slider to the right, and that background now might be hard to see on your screens, but that background is starting to soften up and that noise is disappearing. I'm going to take that all the way to the right. I'm going to take sharpness to the left. I'm even going to pull the texture down a little bit. What's the opposite of texture is no texture, I guess. Anyway, so there is a significant difference now in that background compared to what it was just a moment ago. And for good measure, we could probably pull the exposure down a little bit. Now, I don't know if anybody saw, I put some things on Facebook the other day where I created a black background. That's how you do it. You just take all the light away.
Wow.
How cool is that?
That's so easy when you can select the subject. Wow.
Yeah. And of course, you can also make a white background by going all the way to the right and then taking out saturation. So now you've got a white background. So whatever pushes your buttons, if you want to play with that sort of stuff, black or white or any color in between. But I'm just going to go a little bit darker. There we go. I like that. And that's it. That's the job done right there. So again, probably not going to see a big difference between before and after of this one. So that's before, and that's after. So before, after. But trust me, when I look at this closely, that is a lot of that noise is gone. What? I don't even know what the ISO was here. Let me have a look. Oh, it was only 800. Yeah, I don't know why it was so noisy. But there was definitely some noise. Okay, so, I mean, how cool is that, guys? That's just, I think, you know, for those of you that are into bird photography, it's a bit of a game changer for that sort of thing. You know, same with this Major Mitchell here. Let's do a crop. Go here to select subject. Boom, there it is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the background dark. It's already dark. I'm going to bring the exposure up on the bird. Shadow detail up a little bit. A little bit of saturation. Really vibrant. Now, the saturation slider here is a lot less potent than the saturation slider in the basic panel. Like, you know, you can slide this a fair way and it doesn't, it's a lot more subtle. I mean, that's not very subtle, but, you know, you can sort of move it a fair bit without it looking really tacky. If I did that same amount of adjustment, which I will, I'll show you in a moment. If I did that same amount of adjustment, we'll just sharpen that too. and there's the job done, just like that. But watch this. This is the saturation, the normal one. You see how that really is over the top. You can't get that much adjustment when you're using those local adjustments. Okay, so again, before, after, no Photoshop required. Easy peasy. There we go for time. So that's an hour and a half. Wow, time flies. I hope you're all learning a few things from this. It's you know, these new tools are quite remarkable. Look, I'm not going to worry about doing more of these now. I want to show you a couple of tricks in Photoshop that are new. So I think you get the gist of what we've got here available to us. Again, the subject, the sky, the brushes like they were before, and the color range, lumens, etc. is all still there. But these two are the game changers. Those two things are amazing, and the ability to intersect those masks as well.
Mark, what does the depth range one do, the one at the bottom?
That is for, I believe that's for, well, it says there, only available photos that contain depth information. So I'm not sure which cameras even do that.
Okay.
So
And have you
I thought
tried-
it was only iPhones, some iPhones.
that's a HEIC iPhone photo right there, and it's not showing it.
Okay.
Well, hang on. Let's see.
Have you tried the select subject on a human, on a portrait?
I have. We're going to, and it works perfect. It's fantastic.
Great.
It really is. I'm just going to do a grad filter, and the depth range is still not there, and that's a HEIC iPhone photo. So, yeah. Oh, maybe it's the portrait photos, because the portrait photos on an iPhone blur the background out.
Mm.
Maybe it's that. I'll try that later. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you can try it later. Anybody can try it. But anyway. All right. So I'm just going to escape out of that. So I'm going to right click and edit in Photoshop. Now in Photoshop, we've got these new things called neural filters. And this is amazing. This is witchcraft.
I found this on the web.
I didn't even ask you. It's witchcraft. It really is. So I'll go in here to filter and click neural filters. Now, as you can see from this photo here, this is an iPhone photo, and typical iPhone, everything's in focus, right? I snapped it out of the side of the car, driving on the track on the way, on the inland track up to Happy Valley, up on Fraser, a couple of months ago, or a month ago, whatever it was, and the dingo was just walking along. Literally, I could have reached out and patted him. Not that I would, but that's how close he was. So I grabbed the iPhone and just grabbed some shots. Watch this. There's a thing in here called depth blur. Got a whole heap of things in here: skin smoothing, zooming, remove artifacts, colorize. You got old black and white photos. It colorizes. It's remarkable. It does skin tones, and you know, it's just nuts what this can do. Smart portrait, harmonizations, another RD1 landscape mixer. I'll show you that in a minute too. But this depth blur, watch this. I'm just going to click the button, turn it on. You watch the background. You see down here it says processing on device. A lot of these things used to process in the cloud, and they would take half an hour to process. Now it's much. Look at that. Boom. All of a sudden, we have a photo where the background is blurred. Our subject is still sharp. I'm going to click on here, focus subject. It'll do it again. And now I'm going to change the strength to really, really strong. Uh-oh. Might be asking too much. These newer filters are all still quite experimental and new.
It'll work okay if you had a PC.
Oh, there we go. No, it's look at that. Beautiful. Beautiful.
That's amazing.
A little bit of haze there. It is pretty amazing, isn't it?
Mm.
And of course, all it needs now is a crop. A little bit better. And then save. Oh, I probably could have taken that ear tag out while I was at it. But there we are, back in Lightroom, catalog, completely new image, because it creates a new image. It'll now be a TIFF file rather than a HEIC file. And yeah, I should have taken that out while I was in Photoshop, but that wasn't the purpose of going to Photoshop, was to show you how.
Can you use the healing, the Band-Aid in Lightroom to do that?
Beg your pardon?
Can you use the healing tool, there's that Band-Aid tool in Lightroom? How do you do that in Lightroom?
Yeah, you could do it, but it's not going to be as good.
Oh, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll try. Let me grab it, and we'll just paint over that there. Just got to find a part that's going to match the colour, so we go dark. Oh, look, it's better than it was, but it's still not perfect. Look, a bit of fiddling around, you'd probably get that right.
Yeah.
But honestly, the Band-Aid tool or the spot healing brush tool in Photoshop is far superior to what Lightroom.
Yeah.
Still some things that Photoshop does a lot better. And like, there's an example right there, that blurring that background out. It kind of doesn't look like it was taken with an iPhone anymore, does it? It's completely changed that photo from that. I suppose we should crop it so it looks the same. To that. Remarkable. Okay, and that brings me to these two fine looking pair of dudes. Actually, can anybody actually see anything? I can't see anybody.
Oh.
So, my good mate Ken, second driver, he's there, and that's me, just in case you're wondering. So again, right click, iPhone photo, edit in Photoshop. And again, we're going to use that neural filter. Depth blur. Process. That is crazy. So we're going to focus subject. There we go. It actually looks like it's a little bit blurry. It's actually having trouble with the camo picking up the difference between the background and the foreground. It thinks that some of this camo is there. That's interesting. So yeah, I don't know if there's a way around that or not. But
You
anyway,
could put a mask on it and take it out?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I haven't played with it enough. Just think what it can do. We've got this focal distance, focal range. Let me just try that. See what that does.
Just delete Kane.
Sure, he appreciates that. I think he's on here tonight, so yeah, just be careful. No, it's not going to do it, but yeah.
Whoops.
The answer to that would be to make a second layer. Very simple. Make a second layer. In fact, I'll show you how to do it in case you run into this problem. So I'll just cancel out of that. I'll just duplicate that layer by hitting Command or Control J. So I've got a new layer there. I'll make another one actually. And we'll go to this one here. Bring that new filter back. Okay, let's do its thing. Depth blur. Very simple solution. Okay, focus subject. It's actually blurred Ken out. But it knows that I'm the main subject. So. Click OK. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a mask on there. There. Grab a brush. Black brush. I'm just going to paint here and bring all this stuff back to life, as you can see. So all that's doing is revealing the photo underneath. Okay, you get the idea?
Yep.
Easy. Easy peasy. All right. So there you go. Soft background from a photo that it's done a bit of a strange artifact here too. So it obviously needs a bit of work. But all in all, though, it's pretty amazing. Now, speaking of amazing, I'll just save that back. Before we finish up, I'll show you a couple more things in these neural filters. I just really wanted to make you aware of them. They're the sort of thing that you can just go and play with and just figure out what they do. So I'm just going to find something here. And this is just crazy. Let me do this one. I'm going to right click, edit Photoshop. Okay, so we go up into neural filters again. So filter, neural filters. Now this next filter is beyond crazy. See this thing here, landscape mixer? I'm going to click on that. And now this is New Zealand, right? They get snow in New Zealand, don't they? So, a bit like Melbourne, I believe. They get it all in the one day. Beautiful sunny day like this. And then...
Tassie this month.
What's that?
Snowing in Tasmania this month.
Oh, I heard it was going to snow at Mount Hotham this week.
It's already snowed.
Oh, well. Oh, look at that.
Wow.
Is that crazy or what?
That's beautiful.
I mean, it's just nuts. But wait, there's more. Did you know they have these fields of yellow flowers over in New Zealand? Like seriously yellow fields of flowers rolling across the meadows.
I didn't get that. Could you try it again?
The rocks have got grass on them.
I know. It's just crazy, isn't it? So look, it's a bit of fun you can have with this stuff, but let's see what this one does. I this I did one the other day when I was playing with this of the Kimberley, and all the spin effects was covered in snow. It was a little bit different.
I really like that image.
I beg your pardon?
I really like that image.
I know, it could be real. You
Yeah.
cannot believe anything you see now in Photoshop. Sorry, when you see photos now, you're not going to be able to believe anything. It's just that simple to change stuff. You're just not going. If you look in really closely, you're bound to find noise and stuff. And there's probably some strange artifacts and stuff. But at the end of the day, that's just crazy. So let me just go back and look at the original image versus the one with the snow. So there we go. There's the original. Then it's snowed. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? So you've got something to play with there, guys. Neural filters. Now, those neural filters, I haven't got any portraits of anybody. But you, in those neural filters, there's a whole heap of portrait. I didn't put any people. I should have. Sorry. Yeah, there's a whole heap of filters that revolve around people.
The landscape mixer turned it to snow.
So I just encourage you to hop on there and have a play and just experiment with what those filters do. Yeah, I don't know if you're going to use these landscape things or not, but they're all a bit of fun. The only way to really discover what they do is to just try them and see what they do. So you can't.
With those neural filters, you need to have an active internet connection for some of them.
Well, okay. With them, let's just have a look here. So neural filters. The first time you use them, yes. All these ones I've already downloaded. So I've downloaded them all. But unlike what it used to be like before this version of Photoshop, they now process on your computer. Before they used to, and there's still a couple here that process in the cloud, and they're, I don't know which ones do that, but certainly this landscape one, I'll go back in this landscape one. Let's try it. Let's see what this does. See at the bottom here, it says processing on device.
Okay.
Yeah, before it used to process in the cloud. But you do need an internet connection to start to download these. They're not already there. You've got to download them.
How do you do that?
You just click it. Well, instead of these little switches, they're like a little cloud symbol.
Oh, okay.
I've downloaded them all, so you've got to. Yeah, so all you got to, I hope no one died then. But yeah, so all you've got to do is click on the little clouds and they'll download. But check that out. That's totally changed that whole. We're in the jungle now. We're not up in the Kimberley anymore. We're in some jungle. I just think it's just crazy. It's a good bit of fun. That's that's what it is. But that actually looks like some rainforest jungle, Cambodia or something.
Mm.
Oh,
Mark,
now, is it?
Mark, have you had a play with Vivenza yet?
With which?
The one up the top, Vivenza.
The Nix collection that's on the side.
Oh, Vivisa, that's very old. That was the first. That was the first Nick filter I ever bought.
Ah.
Probably about 15 years ago. And it's basically like a sophisticated radial filter, but everything that can do, you can now do in Lightroom using those radial filters.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it used to be the go-to for fixing stuff up, but yeah, it's not really relevant when you compare it to what you can do in Lightroom and Camera Raw with the radial filter. They virtually do the same thing. Oh, look at that, we've got snow up the Kimberley again.
Oh.
Anyway, they're just a bit of fun, those filters. But yeah, pretty amazing what they're capable of doing. Okay, well, does anybody have any questions before we finish up? Hopefully you've learned a few things. I don't think I've left anything out. Oh, no, I have left something out. I beg your pardon. There is another thing. So let's say you have a photo that, well, let's take our friend the dingo here. Let's zoom in. Now, we can't zoom in very far because it's an iPhone photo. If we look at the size of it, it's 3162 by 2486. We compare that to a Z7 photo, 8256 to 5504. We can zoom in a lot more on this one, as you can see. However, if we right click on the photo and we come down here to enhance, that one there, we click on that and we go for super resolution and then we click enhance. That will create a new photo. Here it is. Now, if I zoom in, you can see I can zoom a lot more. Now it does, there's a couple of nasty bits on here. They're left over from that thing we did in Photoshop where we blurred the background. So the selection wasn't quite perfect. And I saw that, but I wasn't going to waste time fixing it. But you can see that now, we can see those. But look at the difference in the face, zooming in on the face of that one versus that one. Huge difference. So it's about double the size. So if you were going to do a big print or something, that enhance works really, really well. Okay, so I'll just give you another example. So let's take this little guy here. So let's do a big crop, okay? And just so we've got him like this. Now Z7's got a lot of pixels, so we can do a pretty good crop like that. But that's quite small. If I click on it, you can see it's not really zooming much. It's virtual. It's almost 1-to-1. So if I right click on this and go enhance, use super resolution. Wait for the preview, we'll just let it do its thing. So it's creating this enhanced top left-hand corner. It says creating enhanced DNG. So we'll just let it do that. Take a moment. But that's one that sort of slipped past a lot of people because it's just sort of tucked away there in that right click menu. But very handy tool if you're, if you wanted to print that a little bit bigger, you might want to print that A3 Plus or something. You could quite realistically use the enhance and print it from that. So let's zoom in now. So I'll just go back to the original photo. I'll just drag this one along. So So this is the original photo. Zoom, zoom. This is the enhanced photo. Look at that. So it's done a pretty good job. A little bit of noise, but we haven't even worked on the photo yet, so you could easily fix the noise. But again, that's just a great tool. So again, right click, and then you click on enhance.
Is that an iPhone photo too?
This one?
Yeah.
If I had an iPhone that could take a photo that good.
But so you can enhance any
Yeah, no, you can enhance any image. No, that original photo there is 8256. It's taken with the Z7. I'm not sure which lens. I'll tell you in a minute. With the 500mm. So that's a little flame robin. They come up from the high country there. Beautiful little bird. But look at the difference using that enhance.
Mark?
Yeah.
When you do that enhance, it makes it a DNG file again. So if you then wanted to get it to an outside processor.
Oh, you can do whatever you want with it.
How do you convert it to a high-res JPEG file then?
You would do that when you just do your export, and you just export it as a JPEG. So it's the same. It's exactly the same as if you're exporting here's the original RAW file. We're exporting that turns it into a JPEG, whereas this one here is a DNG file. And if you were printing it on your own printer, you wouldn't have to. You just go up into the print module and away you go. But if you were sending it off to a lab, you would have to export it as a JPEG.
Okay.
Easy peasy. So you just go into your export dialog and turn it into a high-res JPEG. And away you go. Now, if you wanted to enhance this, you could still do what we did before. You could go in here. Look, hit select sky by mistake. Detected. Oh, look at that. It knows that the sky is not green. Select subject. There it is. I'm going to invert it, and then I'm going to come back down here, and I'm going to use the noise slider all the way to the right, sharpness to the left, texture to the left. clarity. And that's absolutely fixed that up. And if I wanted to enhance the bird, then I would create a new mask, select the subject, don't invert it this time, and I would just come down and do a bit of sharpening down here. And there we are.
Mark, which would you prefer to do that, increase the resolution in Photoshop or use gigapixel?
Look, I think gigapixel is probably going to do a better job. But not everybody has gigapixel. You know, so Topaz gigapixel, you're still going to buy that. But there's the end result there. And look, that doesn't look too bad. Like that bird is sharp as. A little bit of noise down here, but that's very sharp. And the background looks pretty good too. So I think that's a pretty good result considering how big that thing started off as. Remember, that's what it started out as, that tiny little bird. Okay.
Which is big.
So pretty cool tools, guys.